turn this thing off. Okay.
Oh. 1 sec, it's reconnecting.
No worries.
Okay, yeah, looks like we're live.
Great.
All right, so first off, thank you to everyone who's able to join us today. My name is Aidan McDonough, and I am the chair to Greater Boston Young Democrats. Our guest for today's Zoom call was first elected to the Cambridge City Council in 2017. In her 2019 bid for re-election, she earned the most #1 votes in Cambridge's ranked choice voting system by a very wide margin, and followed that up with being elected by her colleagues to chair the council as mayor. So please welcome me in joining Mayor Sumbul Sidiqqui. Hello, Mayor.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. It's a crazy time, so the fact that you're giving us an hour of your time is really, really appreciated.
Happy to.
So getting right into it, I was reading an article based off of the Scout Cambridge, where it kind of talked about your first 100 days. And you've had a very normal 100 days. So I want you to kind of talk about why you originally decided to run for Cambridge City Council in 2017, what you ran again on in 2019, and how that agenda has kind of been impacted by COVID-19 and how you've had to change gears.
Sure. So I grew up in Cambridge. It's my hometown. So it's great to be serving my hometown. And I think it goes back to the big reason I ran for office in the first place. It was because about my commitment to people and helping people. And so that's really where the motivation to run came from. And I saw elected office as an opportunity to merge my interest in public service, in policy, and my background as a legal aid attorney all in one position. And I think that's why I've been able to get to this point. I think last year, the first term, I focused on a few areas. I focused on work related to tenant displacement. So pushed a lot on making sure that our legal services were funded. I chaired the then Mayor Mark McGovern, with him a task force on tenant displacement issues. And on that came around looking at how to strengthen tenant education, how to think about policy when it comes to tenant displacement. And a lot of that depends on the state. I also focused on, things related to early childhood, making sure that we were committing to scholarships for our low-income children. We, in partnership with other counselors, we worked on children's savings accounts as well. And that, the goal is to get those started for kindergarteners this fall. I also focused on having conversations on race and equity and having community events such as the community iftar. So a lot of different things. And now that I'm here as mayor, things have had to shift because of COVID-19. I think January and February, I was focused on the preservation of the Fresh Pond apartments and a lot of the conversations that started prior to the term around preserving those buildings. And those, I was happy to have taken that vote along with my other colleagues on making sure that we were going to preserve those buildings. And so that was something that I'm very happy that happened very early on before, COVID hit. And now that we're in COVID, some of this will have to shift in that we, a lot of the tenant displacement issues, a lot of that policy, whether it was related to the real estate transfer fee, a lot of things that were coming down the pipeline, there's a certain lack of clarity around that because we are really literally thinking about the impacts that are happening daily, and starting with folks, who need, food, who are losing their jobs, And, we have some good legislation that is keeping folks in their homes for now. But it's all shifted, and, it's a challenging time, but I'm happy to go into that more. But to answer, to your question, that's a little bit more about my background and some stuff I worked on last term. And now we're shifting gears to COVID.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think, because I was talking about this with our political director, Rob Barnes, prior, that it's just you are a literal young Democrat. I believe you're 32 years old.
Yeah.
Don't mind me sharing. And you're a first-term mayor, and in your first 100 days, you're dealing with a global pandemic. Like, that's just, I couldn't imagine. But it's just, I think from across the river over in Brighton, I see some of the work that you're doing, and I think you're addressing the issue really well. And that's why a lot of us wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to speak with you to kind of go over those specific types of legislation that you and the Cambridge City Council are working on to make sure that everyone stays safe during this time. So
yeah.
Kind of getting into some of these specific breakdowns, like what communities in Cambridge have you been noticing are being impacted the most by the spread of the virus?
So I think from my perspective, everyone has been impacted, and this reality, it's really unprecedented. And I think our communities of color are hit the hardest. And we see who COVID is literally affecting, right? And the health disparities. And then we look at the communities, within that who may not have COVID, but they are the service workers, they're the undocumented residents, they are the low-income families who are bearing the brunt of the pandemic's effects. So the people who already had housing stability prior, that is exacerbated, right? People who are losing their jobs. So that's happening. And then we're seeing that, even if you weren't low income, right? If you're a small business owner, if you're middle income, a lot of even these bigger companies have had to lay off and cut jobs and put people on furlough. So across the gamut, it's been has had a lot of impact. And so, that's what we're going to continue seeing as the crisis lengthens.
Well, I think that's a great kind of segue into this next topic, because it is COVID-19 is impacting everyone.
Yeah.
I know that you, as well as similar to other municipalities, have set up a disaster relief fund.
Yeah.
So I wanted you to kind of highlight the work that's been accomplished with the disaster relief fund. I know that it recently raised over $3.5 million in donations. Who qualifies for support to receive the support from the Workers Fund, and where can folks donate to continue on the gains that are in the disaster relief fund?
Sure. So, before I start, I just wanted to really thank the residents. We've had, over 1,000 residents, donate to the fund. And then we've been, we're really grateful to have a lot of great partners, to the corporate partners who have been able to donate larger amounts. And so far, we've been able to donate around 3.6 million, which is, fantastic. But I will say that number is big. But what we're seeing is, the need is, we're getting so many applications. And so our city has been able to formalize a great team, very, very short notice to get people to review applications. It's kind of a team of 50 folks who are on the phone helping folks with applications. We have, various languages that are offered so that people can call in. As far as eligibility, you have to be a Cambridge resident. You either have to be a tenant or own your home through one of our city's affordable housing homeownership programs. and your income, you have to have be at or below the 100% area median income prior to the loss or reduction of income due to the COVID-19 crisis. And then finally, the fourth criteria is that you have to demonstrate a loss as a result of COVID-19. So, you know, we do not require like a social security number for these funds. Immigration status is not considered in eligibility. You know, there's some documents that you have to provide, but you know, we really are trying to work with everyone who does apply. And we've had to say no to individuals who, there's a few categories that we're seeing. We are getting, you know, applications from folks who aren't Cambridge residents. We're getting applications from folks who, you know, may prior to COVID had, you know, may have back rent to pay. So then we're directing those folks to our multi-service center because there's funds for helping with back rent and issues related to that. And then, you know, they're homeowners as well who are having difficulty. And I think, you know, that was a policy decision that we had made, that we want to help the folks who are the most unstable and may not have savings and a home technically of their own. And so that's why we prioritize tenants. So, you know, that's a little bit about eligibility. I think our hope is also to open the fund up and think about, I can get into this later, but small business relief as well. And we're also trying to help our nonprofits, but really right now the priority is the Cambridge residents who've been impacted. And you know, we're still accepting donations. So the link you know, you could go to is cambridgema.gov/COVID-19/MDRF. So that's the Mayor Disaster Relief Fund. So I can share that with you after too. So, but yeah, we are still donating. I think we're still fundraising, and this is going to be with us for many more months to come. And we have to be there for the community.
Absolutely. Now, going into what I believe is probably a passion topic for you, housing. I want to get into the emergency shelter that the city manager were able to put together. Can you tell us about what the process of that kind of looked like, opening the War Memorial athletic facilities as this emergency shelter?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I think I want to start with the whole notion of we've, as a city, have been able to do things during this crisis that normally I think it would have taken years to kind of do, right? And that's been really interesting to kind of watch for an emergency. And so everything shifts and you just make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think about this issue a lot of, you have a stay-at-home advisory and we're asking people to stay home and, you know, who don't have a home to stay in. So, you know, it's really incumbent on city government to be thinking about that. And I think this shows us there's going to be a reflection piece on this of like, you know, the fact that, you know, we are able to act this quickly, we need to be acting even quicker when we think about long-term supportive, affordable housing for our unsheltered community. I think this has just showed that cities can act, but quickly. And this has always been a need. So the city appointed an emergency task force to look at locations for a shelter of some sort. And again, this process has changed so many different times. And I think there's been a question that we've gotten, like, why is this changing all the time? And the reality is because the facts are always changing. And so, you know, this shelter came about through a task force that was assigned to look at various locations throughout the city. You know, one of the first locations was the Cambridge Mosque. You know, the mosque had reached out to me and said, you know, we want to help. Can we be a field hospital? Can we, you know, can you use it? There were staff who did walkthroughs of not only that location, but many. And ultimately, the War Memorial was chosen for a few reasons. But, number one, it's been always designated as an emergency shelter. And the staff felt that it was a large enough space to have different components to it, have a component where folks could be in quarantine as they awaited the results. And then having eventually, we were able to figure out that we can get tests. And I think that was a big relief because we always wanted to have tests, and we always wanted to test folks staying at our shelters and make sure that, we've seen the headlines, what's happening in so many other cities these are the most vulnerable populations that have this spread. So early on, our city and our Cambridge Police Department, our Cambridge Health Department, we're getting PPE to the homeless shelters, right? And I think, we prioritize that, and that's maybe why we're seeing, we haven't seen a crazy outbreak yet. Knocking on wood, you just don't know. But we've been able to test the residents that are coming from 240, from Salvation Army, and test them from COVID-19. And if they have it, the state, which has taken action on this, and the cities were waiting for this, the state has, hotels that they've designated in Lexington. And, there was a spot in Cambridge that we were like, great, Free Point, and then Free Point didn't work out. So there's been all these pieces that we thought were going one way and they go the other. So, but that's a little bit of the process, but it was thinking through about 17 locations, and really having a committee that included Bay Cove, Casper, who's really providing some of the services at the site.
That's awesome. And then this is it's the city's partnership with the Broad Institute that's been doing the testing, correct?
Yeah, so we partnered with the Broad Institute to provide testing in our nursing home facilities, and that those extended to include our unsheltered residents. And now I think it's been an availability of kind of the to get those tests. It's the swabs and other things that has been a barrier to do universal testing. But I think we are in the process of opening up a site in Cambridge that will be for Cambridge residents to get tested.
That's awesome. And now transitioning into the eviction moratorium.
Yeah.
The City of Cambridge issued a moratorium on evictions on April 3rd, almost 3 weeks ahead of the Commonwealth taking action on this. A great example of how much municipalities are leading us through this crisis in many ways. What went into that decision?
So, I think this is something that the council and I very much cared about, and we were hearing there was just so much anxiety from this pandemic. Folks really worrying about how they're going to pay for rent or keep, have some housing stability. And so, we wanted to really make sure that people had a place to stay without fear of getting physically evicted. And so we've also, wanted to send a letter to our management companies, to our landlords, to say, look, we understand for landlords, you're not getting rent either. So this is a hard situation for all, but to be flexible, right? And, there were people who were saying, oh, I have the money, but, does this mean I don't pay the rent? And we said, no, you still have an obligation to pay the rent if you can, but if you're struggling, we'll also have a fund to help you. And a lot of people also, in affordable housing have an option to get interim rent certification. And so there are these ways that we were thinking, how do we educate folks on that? How do we, really have some housing resources available? And we have a great housing liaison, Maura Penzick, who, literally, if there's residents who are maybe being asked to move by a certain date because that was already scheduled, we're making those calls, right? We're making those calls and saying, look, this is a really hard time. We have this moratorium, just be patient. And, for the most part, landlords have been very, from everything from the big management companies to the smaller ones, people have been very understanding because this is something that we're all going through together.
Yeah. I want to talk about the closing of Cambridge Public Schools.
Yes.
So as mayor of Cambridge, you also co-chair. You're also the chair of
yeah.
the committee. Sorry, can you talk about navigating the closing of Cambridge Public Schools and what was most challenging about that process?
Sure. I think this is definitely one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face this year and the next year and the next year, and the ramifications of the closing of public schools in our country and what that will do to impact learning. We're going to be feeling that for a long time. So the process, everything in this process has been led by data and led by what the experts are saying to us. And we had a really early meeting in March. It was Thursday in March. I think it was the 12th or the 11th. And it was me and the city manager. And then it was organized by Mayor Walsh and Curtatone, along with, many mayors. And we were in a huge conference room at Partners in Health and hearing from these experts and saying, look, the next step is to close the schools. And, in our initial conversation with the administration, from their point, they're like, this is what, closing the schools? We can't do that. We can't do that. And you have to really make them understand, look, no, we have to, because if we don't, this is what could happen. And so, we took, early action compared to other places and said, look, this is going to have a huge impact. But the administration right away said, look, we have to think about the needs, right? We have to think about the fact that there's so many kids who are on free lunch, free-reduced lunch, who get free breakfast. How are we going to make sure that we have a meals program? So right away, working with Food for Free, which is a great nonprofit doing amazing work. We launched this emergency meals program, right? We realized that so many of our families don't have internet, right? Again, we were able to, these solutions, we were able to identify these families and get them hotspots and distribute Chromebooks, right? Like, it all happened very, very quickly. And I think I go back to thinking about what I said, if only, we could have been doing, we could have done hotspots a while ago, right?
It's interesting.
Yeah, so these are some of the things that we did. Virtual learning has been very much, I think, challenge for a lot of folks, right? Teachers have their families and they're going through things, right? And then we have families who are being so impacted, and it's not always in alignment. And so we are pushing the district to come up with as detailed of a recovery plan as possible, and to be really thinking about the short term, which is the next 2 months, 3 months, June, July, May. It's thinking about the midterm, and it's thinking about the long term. What will school look like? I think we want the school committee, and as chair of school committee, I really want that information as we move forward. And they're difficult conversations to have because some of it is unclear. But even if it's unclear, I personally do want to hear, are we reaching the kids we're supposed to reach? Who aren't we reaching, right? Who aren't we reaching? I expect our administration to really know those kids and do everything we can to reach those families. And so it's a work in progress. It's very challenging, I have to say. I'm
sure
it's hard. So that's kind of the schools piece. There's a lot of moving pieces on that one.
Yeah. And I want to take the time to also make sure to highlight that if people are interested in locating a meal site, there's a full list on the City of Cambridge's website for food assistance.
Yes.
Now I want to talk about small businesses. I, in my professional capacity, work with small businesses in the neighborhood of Brighton. So this is kind of a passionate topic for me. I'm curious to know if you can discuss some of the programs that the city recently started, which contracts local restaurants to make meals for people experiencing homelessness. I think it is wonderful and amazing and creative. So if you can speak to that more, I would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is one of the things that came out of thinking around, all our communities are, experiencing various challenges. So how do we work together and figure out unique solutions? And this was something that, our small businesses and our associations were really, excited about. The partnership is with 18 restaurants. And so far, over 7,000 meals have been provided to homeless residents in need. And so that's about 2,000 meals each week that we've been able to, directly purchase. And it's that money goes then directly back to our business, community. And, it's one of those things I don't think it's enough, right? I think, we have to really think about other ways to help our businesses who are really struggling. And not all owners are the same either. So we know there's a lot of needs. With this contracting with local restaurants, we wanted to help our homeless residents access food and the shelters to have that capacity to do that. And we wanted our local restaurants to have some income. And so it really made sense to bring those needs together. And there's going to be a lot of ongoing work on that. I think as I said earlier, the fund, the disaster relief fund, is also going to have a small business component to it.
Okay.
Those details, will be released next week. So stay tuned.
That's exciting. Is there anything else that this you mentioned that there's the announcement? Is there anything else that we may not have covered that might be assistance for small businesses?
So the applications are actually due, I think, by Friday, May 1st, but we used our community development grant money to set up a small business relief COVID-19 fund. And those were $6,000, grants of $6,000 to small businesses. And so that certainly not enough again, but something that we pivoted the use of our CDG money to do that. And so we've received, so many applications to that. So we started with that, and now we're shifting gears to figure out how to, support small businesses further through various partnerships.
That's awesome. Great work. All right, so now we have, we're kind of getting towards the end of this of our conversation, but we can open up to Q&A in a little bit. Some general questions and looking ahead. We are over a month into this crisis. What are some of the city's greatest needs at this point in time? And what is the city working on to address, and how is the city working to address those needs?
Yeah, I think right now we need a recovery plan, right? And that recovery plan starts, I think, in my eyes, I think education is really important to me, and how we are looking at our educational system now and to the future. So it's a great need. And then, we're working on, as I said earlier, really working on getting those plans in front of the school committee to discuss and hear from folks on their questions and concerns, I think, and what they're seeing that's not happening, and what the gaps are. And then, really thinking about our small businesses. I think the city is coming up. There's a task force that is being created after council discussed it, to focus on what that recovery will look like, right? Right now there's conversations, right? Is it going to be curbside retail for a while, right? or like, is it going to be, two people in a store at a time? There's all these scenarios that the people are thinking through. I think it's right now we're really thinking about, given the needs, how do we think about a phased approach to reopening? Right now, it is simply, I think, too early to say, we're going to open on June 1st. I think really goes back to what the data is showing us and what the numbers look like. I think the best practices, as I've said, if we have at least 2 weeks of declining cases, and there's just declining cases, and then we can have a conversation about testing and how much testing we're doing and how much, every person who gets tested, then you have to actually trace their contacts and make sure that those folks are quarantining. We are still figuring out a system on how best to do that. The state's doing that, but we haven't been able to it. But anyway, I answered a lot in your one question about what the city's greatest needs are. But the needs are to look at the business community, our education, and also our testing capabilities, and making sure that we are testing at higher rates. I think that was has been one of the problems. We don't know how many asymptomatic people we have. And if we knew that, then it could kind of tell us, all right, well, we've tested 50,000 people, and people are quarantining and people are doing this. Okay, it looks like we can start to reopen this sector, or we can open City Hall and have only like 2 people come in at a time. All these things have to be informed by those types of conversations.
I would imagine a lot of that to get accomplished will require coordination. That was something that we, on our end, Greater Boston Young Democrats, really wanted to make sure we took some time to have a conversation around, because our chapter has the largest membership within the Young Democrats in Massachusetts. So what has the coordination effort kind of been like among the mayors in the Greater Boston area? And then even so with the state and with our federal elected leaders?
Yeah, I think we've been on a lot of Zooms with the Metro Mayors Coalition and the city managers. Really, sometimes bi-weekly, tri-weekly calls, hearing from experts, hearing from what folks are doing. We want to have as much collaboration, coordination as possible. So, that's what it's looked like among the mayors and the city managers. We also are in very close contact with our state representatives. I talk to Rep. Decker quite frequently about everything. She's works within the state and has a lot of contacts with the key people who we need information from. So she's been a big partner. I got a call from Congresswoman Clark the other night just saying, hey, what do you need, right? Anything I can help with. I still owe her a call. And I've been in constant meetings until like 10, 12 at night. And so, that's the type of really all hands on deck approach. Like, what can we help with? The Senator Markey and Warren, they send out, they do kind of like every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, they do check-ins, and there's a call where they'll update you on the federal legislation. So there is a lot of coordination happening. We've been on calls with the Lieutenant Governor, who comes on with the mayors, and I think we've, it's been as coordinated as it can be. So I've been pleasantly surprised with how much alignment there has been, and how much people are willing to help.
Right. I mean, it's the unfortunate reality, but it's in times of crisis, it's when you really see the best examples of community, small to large scale. So that's
Yeah.
really great to hear on all of our electeds end. So then it's great to know that there's help amongst your colleagues, but what can constituents do to help? Are there ways to volunteer? I know we can donate to the relief fund. Is there ways that we could be organizing to make sure that we as a society get through this?
Yeah, no, I think the community members have been just the best. I've seen everything from folks, students at the high school too, making masks for the community, face coverings for the community. I think that's something that's been very, very helpful to many. I've seen folks, so many people volunteering at Food for Free, who helps us with our food distribution to our schools and to our residents who are housing, who are food insecure. So, becoming a volunteer with these organizations, I think if you are healthy and at the time, I think that's a key thing you can do. I mean, certainly there's been organization around key issues. I'm getting a lot of emails right now about helping those who have been incarcerated and raising awareness about that. And I think that's important because I think, that's another area that I don't, that maybe not on my radar, and it should be. And so I'm like, oh, people are organizing and educating me. And I think that's really important, and bringing matters that are important to the attention of elected officials is very important. That's what key community members do. And that's been really certainly helpful to me as this crisis has unfolded.
Thank you. We're now into our Q&A time. So I have some questions that were submitted prior. These were basically conversations that were submitted through my vice chair, Latia Holmes, who you had the chance to meet as well, but then Rob as well. How are you doing through all of this when you're not Mayor Sumbul? How are you doing?
I think there's good days and bad days, right? And I think for me, it's been a lot of it's like, I joked with a few friends like last year. I was like, oh, when I got elected the first time, I broke my ankle. And I told in March 16th, the vice mayor hears a lot about this, and she always makes fun of me because I talk about my ankle all the time. But I broke that ankle. And I said to this year, I was like, oh, my second term, I wonder what's going to happen, right?
Right.
And it was COVID-19, right? And so, it's one of those things where I think, right now it's very important to stay connected to the people you love. The people you're not, I can't see my mom and dad regularly, and I can't hug them. I can't do that. And that's hard. And I think a lot of people are feeling, isolated. And I think for me, it's key to be with the people I care about. And if I can't physically be with them, a lot of phone, video time, a lot of FaceTime, and just checking in with people. That has been a way that's kept me really happy. And truthfully, seeing so many people in the community so dedicated and being helpful. Sure, there's the naysayers and the negative folks, but all that is really outweighed by so much of the positive. So,
yeah.
That keeps me going.
What are you doing to get to get by? Like, what's your favorite quarantine activity that you've been doing? Mine was Legos. I ordered a thing of Legos, and I'm now itching to do another one. It was so much fun.
So I just got into doing puzzles.
I do puzzles.
I started with 100-piece, and now I'm at 300. I know I'm a baby when it comes. I just didn't do puzzles. So like people are making fun of me. They're like, "What, 300?" I'm like, you know what? It was a hard puzzle. So I think the next one is like, I'm going to be ambitious and do 1,000. So, puzzles is, that's been a nice, exciting thing.
That's what my family just did back in Buffalo, and I got mixed reviews about. We normally do 500 over the holiday, and
Yeah.
they did their first 1,000, and it sounds like the house was divided.
Yeah.
Now going into some of the questions that we received. This one comes from Terry. There's been talks about rent strikes as lots of folks are unable to afford rent. What are your thoughts on this?
I think, I see why rent strikes would be the immediate action. I think what we've been telling people is the city will help folks not get behind on rent, because 5-6 months from now, we want folks to be in a position where they're not going to have to get evicted, right?
Right.
Because they've spent all the savings they had, all these things, right? And so I think that's where municipalities are being creative. Other municipalities, and this is something Cambridge I think is committed to doing too. The need arises is using the Community Preservation Act funding and putting that towards like a rental assistance program, so that there are not these rent hikes that rent strikes, or whatever the term you used. So I think it'd be something that, if I haven't heard any residents in Cambridge come to me around that yet, but I'd be open to talking to them about their particular circumstances, and as a matter of policy, what that looked like and what the impacts would be.
Yeah. And then I have another question coming from Eli. His questions is more around the implementation of the mask enforcement. How is this going to be enforced?
Yeah.
Areas that will be more heavily enforced. Will this be made public? Just a long list of questions, all pertaining to I believe it was yesterday or Monday. Of the mandatory.
The mandatory. It was something that was it's been a challenging piece. And me personally, I think for a long time I was on the fence of doing some kind of mask face covering enforcement. And it's been something that I still struggle with, and to be transparent, I think for me what's key is, since we're doing this, is providing the masks or face coverings to residents who need them. And so that's going to be part of the enforcement. And so you'll see in the next day or two some more correspondence coming from us on that. Ideally it is going to be our Cambridge police that's going to be handing out masks, and not ticketing and not finding people. That is not the goal here. I think, as a matter of policy, the solicitor recommends having fines in there to kind of just say, look, that's the worst case scenario. But really, my intent, my goal, and I know I've talked to the commissioner on this, we really want to make sure that people who don't have access to the face coverings get access. My office, one thing I do on my weekends is go drive around and deliver masks to folks who emailed me. And, I've been doing that for weeks now. And these are residents at like big multifamily buildings, who may not be able to leave because they have kids and they don't have babysitters, right? So I'll just leave a stack in the lobby. We've been getting a lot of donations from the Chinese Community Association and the Buddhist community very recently, and all of these gets donated, and the police have been helping actually deliver so many of the masks to our senior housing, to our stores. They literally an officer just today picked up 8 boxes that were donated, and now they're going to go to, each cruiser that's going to be doing this will get a couple hundred. We're going to have a site where folks pick up, we're going to have a dispensing machine of masks as well. So, you know, there's stuff that the details will be shared pretty shortly. We've given like a week kind of like get stuff together, and in this time we're going to make sure that people who are needing the masks actually wear them.
That's awesome. And my last question for you before we wrap up, and this one kind of is like it's more of a personal question, I guess, of where I'm coming from, but there's a lot of conversations about data collection on the people who are being severely impacted. And I want to make sure I can hear what your stance is on the data collection for the LGBTQ community. When Greater Boston Young Democrats volunteered at the Y2Y Youth Homeless Shelter that's run by Harvard students, it's as a youth homeless shelter, and I think the statistical data is 40% of our homeless youth are LGBTQ. So I wanted to see what your stance was on making sure they are being included in the data collection.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, very important to be able to know. Right now, you know, we've been able to, in Cambridge, we finally, after weeks of asking, we're able to get a race, you know, ethnicity breakdown of who is, you know, being impacted by COVID. And, you know, the breakdown is also by, you know, I think it goes to, you know, age, and then there's gender, but there's right now, we don't know that data. And so I think I'd definitely be something that I would be supportive of to make sure that we could get.
That's awesome. Well, Mayor Sumbul, I have no more questions for you. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat and everything we need to know about what Cambridge is doing to address COVID-19, as well as all the things that you're doing in coalition with other electeds. So again,
well, thank you, Aidan. Yeah, and it's great to see you again after a while.
I tell everyone all the time that you're my best friend. So
besties, right?
And now we have proof.
Exactly, forever. Anyway, yeah, you take care, and you know, if any of the young Democrats in Boston want to, you know, get in touch, feel free to, you know, share my information with them.
I really appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, and good luck with the rest of your day. And
thank you.
We'll speak soon.
Yeah, take care. Bye.